Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, August 28, 2025. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Susan Monarez was removed from her position because she did not align with President Donald Trump's Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA, agenda. She is challenging the dismissal, and her lawyers say she chose protecting the public over serving a political agenda. Questions to Secretary Kennedy and the White House today over how to respond to gun violence like the shooting at the Catholic school in Minneapolis, where a gunman killed 2 children. And the acting U.S. attorney for Minnesota talks about what is known about the shooter's motives. California's Governor Gavin Newsom deploys police teams to cities to combat crime and is asked whether it's in response to President Trump's threat to deploy National Guard to more U.S. cities. President Trump suggests holding a Republican National Convention in 2026 before the midterm elections. Vice President J.D. Vance speaks in La Crosse, Wisconsin about the Republican tax cut and spending cut bill, the one dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill. And in foreign affairs, Russian missiles hit a European Union building in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. And Germany, France, and Great Britain tell the United Nations they plan to reimpose sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program, known as snapback sanctions, under the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran. Story from the New York Times: the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention dissolved into further turmoil on Thursday when guards escorted 3 top officials from the agency's Atlanta headquarters during the continuing standoff with the Trump administration over whether the CDC director would keep her job. The high-ranking officials decided to quit, as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was demanding that the CDC director, Susan Monarez, either resign or be fired in a dispute largely over vaccine policy. The White House said late Wednesday that Dr. Monarez, an infectious disease researcher who was sworn in less than a month ago, had been dismissed. But her lawyers, who said she had chosen protecting the public over serving a political agenda, insisted that she remain CDC director until President Trump fired her personally. That was from the New York Times. Secretary Kennedy was asked about the CDC at a news conference today in Austin, Texas. He was there with Governor Greg Abbott to talk about rural health care.
My question was, in light of the recent resignations of the CDC, how are you ensuring that that agency is able to do its job effectively?
I would say this, that first of all, I will confirm that we let go Susan Monarez yesterday. I'm not going to talk about personnel issues, but the CDC is an agency that is very troubled for a very long time, and anybody who lived through the COVID pandemic and saw all of these bizarre recommendations that were not science-based, all the misinformation, understands that the CDC has on its website today that among the top 10 medical innovations, greatest medical accomplishments in history was abortion. This is one of the greatest medical accomplishments because it keeps small families. Go to the website, look at it. Fluoridation, giving kids a toxin, and vaccines. So there's a lot of trouble at CDC, and it's going to require getting rid of some people over the long term in order for us to change the institutional culture and bring back pride and self-esteem and make that agency the stellar agency that it's always been. I'm very confident in the political staff that we have down there now that they're going to be able to accomplish that and ensure the competent functionality of that agency.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at a news conference today in Austin, Texas, with Governor Greg Abbott. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, ranking member on the Senate Health Committee, posting on X, RFK Jr. is pushing out scientific leaders who refuse to act as a rubber stamp for his dangerous conspiracy theories and manipulate science. Today, I am calling for a bipartisan congressional investigation into the firing of CDC Director Dr. Monarez. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, the Health Committee chair, who posted Wednesday night about the CDC, these high-profile departures will require oversight by the Health Committee. Today, said the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee meeting scheduled for September 18th should be postponed. Senator Cassidy writing, serious allegations have been made about the meeting agenda, membership, and lack of scientific progress being followed for the now announced September ACIP meeting. These decisions directly impact children's health, and the meeting should not occur until significant oversight has been conducted. If the meeting proceeds, any recommendations made should be rejected as lacking legitimacy given the seriousness of the allegations and the current turmoil in CDC leadership. That was a statement from Senator Bill Cassidy. The fate of the CDC Director, Susan Monarez, came up at today's White House briefing with the Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
First on the firing of the CDC director,
Sure.
Who will replace her? And then also, overnight the White House said that she did not align with the president's agenda. Dr. Monarez's attorneys say that she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. What specifically did she do wrong?
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement will be announced by either the president or the secretary very soon, and the president and Secretary Kennedy are committed to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC by ensuring their leadership and their decisions are more public-facing, more accountable, strengthening our public health system, and restoring it to its core mission of protecting Americans from communicable diseases, investing in innovation to prevent, detect, and respond to future threats. That's the mission of the CDC, and we're going to make sure that folks that are in positions of leadership there are aligned with that mission.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at her news conference in the White House briefing room. More reaction. Senator Andy Kim, Democrat from New Jersey, posting, "We are talking about Americans' health and safety. Nothing is more important. And yet Trump and RFK Jr. appeared to have fired the CDC director just weeks after she was sworn in and continued to gut a workforce of public servants trying to look out for their fellow Americans' well-being." And Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, with this post, "Good riddance to these extremists at CDC. There is no medical evidence that the COVID vaccine changes transmission or health outcome for healthy children." And now to the shooting Wednesday at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, where a lone gunman killed 2 children, wounded many more, then took his own life. NBC News, writing the interim CEO of Hennepin Healthcare, said the hospital was currently treating 9 patients injured in the school shooting. Of those, 6, including 5 children, are in satisfactory condition. 2 people, 1 adult and 1 child, are in serious condition, and another child is in critical condition. And Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, today ordered the deployment of state law enforcement personnel to support public safety efforts around schools and places of worship after yesterday's shooting. He said in a statement, "Students deserve to start the school year full of hope, excitement, maybe a little apprehension about what the year may bring. No child in America should go to school apprehensive of danger of losing a classmate, of gunshots during prayer." That was from NBC News. Joe Thompson, the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota, said at a news conference today in Minneapolis that the investigation has not pinned down a specific motive for the shooting other than the shooter wanted to hurt children.
The U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, ATF, and other federal law enforcement are working with state and local partners to investigate this heinous act. Our investigation is twofold. First, we are seeking to confirm what we believe to be true, which is that the shooter acted alone and that no one else was involved, that the threat died with the shooter yesterday. We believe that to be true, but we'll leave no stone unturned to ensure the safety of our community. Second, we are investigating the motive, why and how this happened. The shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings that describe the shooter's plan, writings that describe the shooter's mental state, and more than anything, writings that describe the shooter's hate, pure, indiscriminate hate. The shooter expressed hate towards almost every group imaginable. The shooter expressed hate towards black people. The shooter expressed hate towards Mexican people. The shooter expressed hate towards Christian people. The shooter expressed hate towards Jewish people. In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us. The shooter's heart was full of hate. There appears to be only one group that the shooter didn't hate, one group of people who the shooter admired. The group were the school shooters and mass murderers that are notorious in this country. The shooter idolized some of the most notorious school shooters and mass murderers in our country's history. I won't name them, just like I won't name the shooter. They don't deserve to have their names remembered. As I said, the shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings. There is a lot to digest, and we'll know more in the coming days and weeks as we've had an opportunity to go through them. But reading them, one thing is clear. And it's going to be hard to hear, but it's important to the question of why this happened. More than anything, the shooter wanted to kill children, defenseless children. The shooter was obsessed with the idea of killing children. The shooter saw the attack as a way to target our most vulnerable among us while they were at their most vulnerable at school and at church. I won't dignify the shooter's words by repeating them. They are horrific and vile. But in short, the shooter wanted to watch children suffer.
Joe Thompson, acting U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota, at a news conference today in Minneapolis with state and local law enforcement. Back to U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. at his news conference in Austin, Texas. He was asked about this shooting and other mass shootings and public health.
Secretary Kennedy, that's Karen Paul with CBS News. Thanks for being with us today. My question is, in speaking of rural Texas, we know places like Uvalde have experienced one of the worst mass shootings in history. The CDC has previously been responsible for studying gun violence. A lot of those programs have been cut now. Would you still consider gun violence a public health crisis? And who's going to be...
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis. And we are doing, for the first time, real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. People, kids, my classmates, other people would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. at a news conference in Austin, Texas with Governor Abbott. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at her news conference at the White House today got several questions about the Minnesota shooter's gender identity.
This is the second shooting involving a trans-identifying shooter who specifically targeted Christians and Catholic kids. What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
Well, as for the parents and potential therapists in this case, again, all of that is still currently being investigated by the FBI. I know the Secretary of Health and Human Services this morning said that HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking and an increase in violence. And obviously we have mental health problems in this country that this administration and Secretary Kennedy will continue to speak out about and the work that we're doing to solve it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I've seen a lot of calls for action, among these lawmakers saying that we shouldn't just be praying. One that I've seen on the right, actually, is calls for the FBI to institute a new class of domestic terrorism that involves trans ideology. Is that something that the administration would support?
I would have to check with the appropriate people on that.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at her news conference at the White House. Story from CNN. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey on Thursday called for state and federal bans on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, calling them action steps that need to take place. He said there is no reason that someone should be able to reel off 30 shots before they even have to reload. We're not talking about your father's hunting rifle here. We're talking about guns that are built to pierce armor and kill people. That was from CNN. Mayor Frey spoke at a rally today in Minneapolis with other lawmakers and gun control advocates.
Of course we're standing up with love. Of course we're standing up with thoughts and with prayers. But thoughts and prayers are not going to cut it. It's on all of us to see this through so that there is an action, so that something like this never happens again. We need action at the federal level. We need action at the state level. We need coordination with the cities around the country to make sure that every person has this common foundation of safety where they can send their kid off to school and have the confidence that they will be safe. Think of these kids not as somebody else's, but as your own. Think of those last words that you had with your child just this morning before you sent them into school. You kissed them on the cheek, you got them set up with their shoes, you pushed them a pouch of applesauce. Maybe these were little annoyances, but the truth is that there's this common and beautiful thing. We love our children. Make these changes not out of hate. Make them out of a simple and beautiful foundational love for our kids. And so what are we talking about? When we talk about action, we need to talk about the action steps that need to take place. We need a statewide and a federal ban on assault weapons. We need a statewide and a federal ban on high-capacity magazines. There is no reason that someone should be able to reel off 30 shots before they even have to reload. We're not talking about your father's hunting rifle here. We're talking about guns that are built to pierce armor and kill people. Why do we have them coming in by the trunk loads onto our streets around the country?
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, a Democrat, at a rally today in his city. Former Joe Biden White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki posted yesterday, prayer is not freaking enough. Prayers do not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. Current Vice President J.D. Vance quote tweeted her, adding, "We pray because our hearts are broken. We pray because we know God listens. We pray because we know that God works in mysterious ways and can inspire us to further action. Why do you feel the need to attack other people for praying when kids were just killed praying?" This is Washington Today. WTTW-TV in Chicago writing that Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling on Thursday said the Chicago Police Department was preparing for President Donald Trump to make good on his threats to send the National Guard and a strike team of immigration and customs enforcement agents to Chicago. Tom Homan, the former acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Trump's pick to serve as his border czar, told reporters at the White House that the Trump administration was considering using Naval Station Great Lakes, which is about 35 miles outside Chicago, to house federal immigration agents or National Guard troops who could be deployed in Chicago, confirming news first reported by the Chicago Sun-Times. If Trump federalizes the National Guard or sends additional ICE agents to the city, all Chicago police officers will be required to wear their uniforms so they can be clearly identified, Snelling said during a virtual news conference. In addition, Chicago police officers will not be dispatched immediately to reported immigration enforcement operations. That was from WTTW TV. Here's part of Tom Homan's news conference outside the White House.
Reports about a multi-agency immigration enforcement operation in Chicago after Labor Day. Can you confirm those reports and why Chicago?
Look at the crime rate in Chicago. I mean, when this administration first came to power, Brandon Johnson, mayor there, he says I wasn't welcome in Chicago. Where was I the first day? Chicago. And I was up there in operation. And I remember that first day, if I remember the numbers right, the first day we took like 9 predators off the street. Sexual child predators off the street. We arrested members of TDA. We arrested Trendo, Iowa. We arrested members of MS-13. We arrested 2 people that were convicted of murder that were walking the streets, illegal aliens. So in one day, look what we did. Chicago still has a crime problem. So President Trump, again, made a promise to American people, we'll make this country safe again. So Chicago has a crime problem. That's why President Trump's thinking about it.
Mr. Holman, a question about ramping up after Labor Day?
Operations are ramping up across the country, but you can see a ramp up of operations in Chicago, absolutely. You're going to see a ramp up of operations in New York. You're going to see a ramp up of operations continue in LA. And, you know, Portland, Seattle. I mean, all these sanctuary cities that refuse to work with ICE, where we know public safety threats are being released every day into this country, especially those cities, we're going to address that. We don't have that problem in Texas and Florida where all the sheriffs are working with us and they're actually holding people for us and letting us know when someone's being released. So we're going to take the assets we have and move them to problem areas like sanctuary cities where we know for a fact they're releasing public safety threat, illegal aliens to the streets every day. That's where we need to send the majority of the resources, and that's where they're going.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan speaking to reporters outside the White House. He was also asked about Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat from California, saying at a Politico forum Wednesday night in Sacramento that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is serving as President Donald Trump's private police force.
Gavin Newsom is an embarrassment to the position he holds. Heart stop. If he had an ounce of integrity, he would be calling President Trump and thanking President Trump for making LA safer. He'd be calling the head of ICE and thanking them for the thousands of criminals, public safety threats they've taken off the streets of California. He'd be calling Secretary Nome and thanking her. If he had an ounce, if the data proves it, anybody can look at the data who we've arrested in California, he ought to be thanking us. So Governor Newsom he's an embarrassment. It's the position he holds. And you know, he's trying to be relevant, apparently, whatever. But we're going to be in LA today. We're going to be in LA tomorrow. We're going to be in every California city. We'll be in San Diego. I was in San Diego, in Seattle, Portland last week, meeting with the men and women at ICE to understand the hate being pushed against them, letting them know that the president has their 6. I have their 6. They're going to keep doing the job without apology. So Governor Newsom can stand by and watch President Trump make California safe.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan with reporters in the White House driveway. KCRA-TV in California writes that Governor Gavin Newsom on Thursday announced he's deploying teams of California Highway Patrol officers to major cities across California to crack down on crime. The teams of CHP officers will head to San Diego, Inland Empire, Los Angeles, Central Valley, Sacramento, and the San Francisco Bay Area. The governor's office said the officers will work collaboratively with local law enforcement in those areas. The announcement comes as President Donald Trump considers sending the National Guard to cities across the country to combat crime. That was from KCRA-TV. Governor Newsom, in his news conference, asked about whether this announcement is linked to possible action by President Trump.
Governor, is this in response to President Trump talking about, or is it to prevent the possibility? When President Trump talks about deploying more National Guard troops to more cities, is this part of a response or to prevent that from happening?
Well, I think you can go back to your own reporting. We've been pretty consistent with these kinds of announcements. We haven't necessarily invited you in to the horseshoe here to announce them. We've done it by paper. We do it every week. We're highlighting these things. I've had probably 9 or 10 press conferences on this topic over the course of the last few years. So we're not reacting or responding to anything, quite the contrary, with one caveat. The community wants to see more, and we are trying to be responsive to the people we serve. As it relates to the president in particular, he's doing things to people, not with people. It's a point of profound and consequential contrast. He's de facto militarizing American cities. That's why I led with the Breyer decision. We're waiting for the outcome of that. Could have profound implications in terms of his authority to militarize American cities. Again, certainly here in California, the impacts, though, will be discussed and debated if he moves in our direction across the United States. But I should note, just on that, if he is to invest in crime suppression, I hope the President of the United States would look at the facts. Just consider Speaker Johnson's state and district. Just look at the murder rate that's nearly 4 times higher than California's in Louisiana. This is Speaker Johnson, 4x higher. I'm just offering, again, you've not seen this on Fox News, so President may not be familiar with these facts. So I want to present some facts to the President of the United States, and imagine this is alarming to the President to learn these facts, particularly Speaker Johnson, who's been such a strong partner and ally in these efforts. So the carnage in Louisiana is well defined. Of course, Mississippi leads the nation as the #1 murder state in America. Imagine this in particular may resonate with the President of the United States. It's got a murder rate, it's 180%. 180% higher than Los Angeles. It's interesting. LA has more people. These are all per capita numbers. More people than Los Angeles. Perhaps the President could deploy the National Guard in every corner of Mississippi. It's the murder rate's out of control there. Carnage. And governor may want to make that phone call. Again, if they care about the issues of crime and violence. I would note St. Louis murder rate is 190% larger than Oakland. I can go on. We could talk about the carnage in Arkansas, again, one of the top 10 murder states in America, 2.6 times greater than San Francisco. Again, these are just not just observations, they're stone-cold facts. And the fact remains, if the President is sincere about the issue of crime and violence, there's no question in my mind that he'll likely be sending the troops into Louisiana and Mississippi to address the unconscionable wave of violence that continues to plague those states.
Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat from California, at a news conference held in the governor's office in Sacramento. He was seated at his desk with a member of his cabinet and state law enforcement leaders standing next to him. One reporter asked about the optics, as it looked a lot like what President Donald Trump does often in the White House Oval Office, holding a news conference, sitting down with his cabinet members and others standing.
Governor, thanks for having us in your office. I think it's the first time we're in this setting.
Yeah.
Speaking of mimicking, were you trying to resemble the Oval Office, and can you speak to this setting?
I don't think this comes close, but I appreciate.
What was behind it? You wanting to do it?
No, I mean, we were going to go down to the second floor for all of you insiders. I've never been inspired by that place, so and so I thought it would be nice just to mix it up a little bit. And so talked to Izzy. He had a creative idea today, and thought it'd be nice to invite one or two of you have been here, and I think we created animus because others weren't invited in here, so we figured it would be easier to get everybody in.
Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat from California. Bloomberg News article on his announcement today has this paragraph: Newsom, a likely Democratic candidate for president in 2028, has been emphasizing his efforts to fight crime after California voters pushed for stricter enforcement of retail, drug, and property crimes in a ballot measure last year. President Donald Trump writing on Truth Social today, the Republican Party is doing really well. Millions of people have joined us in our quest to make America great again. We won every aspect of the presidential election, and based on the great success we are having, are poised to win big in the midterms. We have raised far more money than Democrats and are having a great time fixing all of the country, destroying mistakes made by the Biden administration and watching the USA heal and prosper. The results are incredible, a record pace. In that light, I am thinking of recommending a national convention to the Republican Party just prior to the midterms. It has never been done before. Stay tuned. and signed Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, in all caps. That was the post from the president. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about it.
The president just announced that he wants to have a convention right before the midterms next year. The DNC has countered that they too want to have a convention right before the midterms as well. What's the White House's response to that? And can you give us just a little bit of a hint or a tease here as to how the president envisions a convention right before the midterms?
Look, the president put out a statement on this earlier today. I'll let him speak further on the plans that he envisions, but I think he's very proud of the accomplishments and the achievements of his administration, as he should be. The most secure border in United States history, a crackdown on crime here in our nation's capital, an attack or a reversal of the attack on our energy industry from the previous administration. As I just pointed out to you, gas prices today, this Labor Day, are the lowest they've been since Labor Day in 2020. Our economy is bringing in trillions of dollars in revenue from all over the world again. So there's so much for Republicans and for the president and for Americans across the country to be proud of, and I think the president wants to see that celebrated. But for any further details on this as they come, we'll provide you with them.
Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. The story from The Hill: a Democratic National Committee spokesperson confirmed Thursday that the party is considering a large gathering ahead of the 2026 midterms, making official previous rumors after President Trump floated a similar idea among Republicans. The DNC spokesperson said in a statement, Americans everywhere are fired up and ready to fight back against Trump's reckless policies, including his budget betrayal that cuts health care and food assistance for millions of people, to showcase our tremendous candidates running up and down the ballot and harness the amazing grassroots energy we're already seeing. Several options are on the table for next year, including hosting a large-scale gathering before the midterms, the person added. That was from The Hill. The Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin spoke about his party's strategy for the upcoming elections, not just the 2026 midterms, but also the 2028 presidential, during the DNC summer meeting in Minneapolis on Tuesday.
Let me say this for everybody to hear. The presidential calendar process starts today. We will be holding a series of meetings this year. We're planning for meetings throughout the fall and winter and through the spring to make sure that we have a rigorous, effective, fair calendar and process. We need this process to give us the strongest possible candidate, a candidate that's battle-tested to win and ready to lead America forward. Look, the dividends of your work show up long after meetings adjourn. The outcomes of this room steer our party for years and even decades. That's why we're focused on reforms. Necessary and smart reforms. Reforms to steer our party and make us stronger and more transparent. Reforms to help us build trust with the people both in our party and not. We are democratizing the DNC, affirming its commitment to principles of integrity and moving our party forward, united. We don't have to agree on everything, as I've said. But as I always say, let's not confuse unanimity with unity. Our party is strongest when we understand and respect each member's story. And while our principles and values are the same, we don't have to be. It's one of the most beautiful things about the Democratic Party and this committee is where this sometimes messy business of democracy actually leads us to unity. Today is an opportunity for us to hear from each other, to listen to each other, and to get to what needs to be done as we head into the next several election years. For the new members, this is an opportunity to learn from those who have served and continue to serve on this committee. There is a wealth of knowledge in this room. Existing members, this is an opportunity to welcome the new voices on our committee. I trust and know you will impart your knowledge, offer a guiding hand, and also learn from those who are joining us. The work you do isn't easy, it's the work of democracy. And democracy is never easy. Democracy is worthwhile, but never easy. To quote President Kennedy, we choose to do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because they are worth doing and worth doing right. We are embarking on a new future in this Democratic Party, and to do that, we need each of your help. We are committing to our principles of integrity, transparency, fairness, and trust. And as our Democratic Party's charter puts it best, a party which asks for the people's trust must prove that it trusts the people.
DNC Chair Ken Martin at the Democratic National Committee summer meeting in Minneapolis on Tuesday during a meeting of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. A Politico article summarizing his comments. The Democratic National Committee will formally begin the process of reviewing the 2028 presidential nominating calendar in the next few weeks. The DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee will meet in September to discuss formalizing the process by which states can submit applications to appear in the early window, kicking off a months-long process that DNC Chair Ken Martin said would last through the spring. Reopening the influential slate of early primary states represents the DNC's biggest role in shaping the wide-open primary. That was from Politico. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Reuters reporting from La Crosse, Wisconsin. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance emphasized provisions favoring the working class in a massive tax and spending bill during a visit to Wisconsin on Thursday as the Trump administration tries to sell the legislation to voters ahead of next year's midterm elections. President Donald Trump has said the big, beautiful bill passed by Congress in July needs a rebranding. With inflation lingering above pre-pandemic levels, stubborn interest rates, and ongoing debates over the federal deficit, Republicans face mounting pressures to deliver tangible relief to middle and working class Americans. Again, that's the article from Reuters. Here is J.D. Vance at the Mid-City Steel plant in La Crosse.
What the working families tax cuts did is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. It let you keep more money in your pocket. It rewarded you for building a business or working at a business right here in the United States of America. It makes it easy for you to take home more of your hard-earned pay, and it makes it easier. If you're an American manufacturer or an American business, it makes it easier for you to build your facility or expand your facility right here in the United States of America. I happen to believe that it's the dumbest decision we made as a country to reward foreign companies with putting stuff overseas instead of right here in places like Wisconsin. Well, now we have a different president with a different attitude. If you're building in the United States of America, if you're working in the United States of America, if you're trying to earn a decent living right here at home, we are going to fight for you every single day. But if you build crap overseas and try to undercut the wages of American workers, you're going to pay a big fat tariff before you bring it back in to the United States of America. Now, I was talking with a Fox News host earlier, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit. I'm going to make him stand up and be recognized. You guys know Will Kane. Will, a lot of us watch his show. He's doing a good job. You know, what I told Will earlier is that all these problems are interconnected. Why is it that we allowed these Mexican drug cartels to bring this poisonous fentanyl into our communities? Why is it that so many people lost hope and started taking that fentanyl? Why is it that we had a government that seemed to care more about illegal immigrants than they did about their own citizens? It's all connected, because when they shipped your job overseas in the last administration or administrations that came before it, what they also did at the same time is they allowed those cartels to come in to our country and take advantage of our communities. So what the working class families tax cut does is, yes, it gives you more take-home pay. Yes, it cuts taxes on overtime. Yes, it cuts taxes on tips. But it also gives our incredible law enforcement over $100 billion to get those drug cartels the hell out of our country once and for all.
Vice President J.D. Vance at the Mid-City Steel facility in La Crosse, Wisconsin today. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel writes that ahead of the vice president's visit to western Wisconsin to tout the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Bill, Governor Tony Evers' administration released a new analysis estimating the sweeping tax and spending law will cost the state $284 million over the span of its implementation. And Governor Evers, a Democrat, posting on his X account today, let's be clear, Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill adds $3.4 trillion to the national debt, cuts food assistance for kids and families, kicks millions off of their health care, gives tax breaks to the wealthy, increases government red tape. The Metro Washington Council of the AFL-CIO held a rally today in Washington, D.C. to, quote, make it clear that workers run D.C. and, again, quote, deserve better than mass firings, union busting, deportations, and occupation. Here is the Metropolitan Washington Council, the AFL-CIO president, Sam Epps.
Unions are the heart of the labor movement, but if you work for a living, you're a worker, and you're a part of the labor movement too. It's going to take all of us, union members, allies, to win in this moment. We are here today to kick off solidarity season, workers over billionaires. And also we're here because 62 years ago today, over 500,000 Americans, civil rights leaders, faith leaders, community groups marched in this city. We are direct descendants of that fight and that struggle. And today we bring that into this circle together to fight on behalf of those who have been attacked under this administration. And right now, the Trump administration is causing D.C. to have the highest unemployment rate in the nation. D.C. leads the nation in unemployment for the third month in a row, and that's a direct cause of this administration. To all the federal workers who are here today, we see you, we appreciate you, and you deserve better than you have been treated.
Sam Epps is president of the AFL-CIO Metropolitan Washington Council at today's rally in the district. On Wall Street, the Dow up 71, NASDAQ up 115, S&P up 20. AP writes the U.S. economy rebounded this spring from a first-quarter downturn due to fallout from President Donald Trump's trade wars. In an upgrade from its first estimate in July, the Commerce Department said Thursday that U.S. gross domestic product, the nation's output of goods and services, expanded at a 3.3% annual pace from April through June after shrinking 0.5% in the first 3 months of 2025. The department had initially estimated second quarter growth at 3%. Story from Spectrum News. One day before the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which caused $125 billion in damage and 1,833 deaths, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on Thursday reiterated President Donald Trump's pledge to eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, as it currently exists and replace it with a more localized response. She pledged to reform FEMA into an agency that can better respond to people, quote, on their worst days during a time of crisis and disaster. Noem spoke during the third public hearing of the FEMA Review Council, which has been gathering information from leaders at the local, state, and federal levels about how to transform the agency. That was from Spectrum News. Here is Secretary Noem.
I sat with the president for several hours a couple weeks ago and discussed 16 different disasters that we had open in this country and helped make decisions on getting resources out. Many of these disasters were still ones that have been open and needed to be handled and taken care of from previous years. And that is one of the things I'd like to charge your council with is how long should a disaster be left open? How quickly should we deploy resources? And then how long can cases continue to be filed? That is one of the things that makes it difficult to deploy immediately is when the termination date for a disaster goes on 15 to 20 years after the event has already occurred. The president believes that we should be in a disaster response portfolio and footprint, but the long-term mitigation should not be something that the federal government is continuing to be involved in to the extent that it has been in the past. We are in the middle of hurricane season. And so we're working hard to continue to stay prepared for that and notifications. And we've got a couple of months here yet where we're still going to be working with our local leaders to make sure that everything is pre-deployed and in position for whatever storm may come our way, and that we can help people get through those difficult times. And we will be putting out a lot of information today on FEMA as well as to how we have used resources under the Trump administration. I'd like to encourage all of you to be vocal if you've had interactions with the Trump administration and how positive that they've been, to share that with people and tell the story. Tell the story of how different FEMA has been the last 7-8 months under his leadership than it was previous to that. I'm so proud to work for a president that recognizes that disaster response needs to be led by local community leaders. They know best how to serve their communities, but also that we listen to them and the governors on how that response can be best be delivered. And then also that it shouldn't be based on political decisions. We certainly saw that under Joe Biden's administration, and that is not something that's happening under President Trump. President Trump believes that that help should be applied equally to Americans to help them get back on their feet and their families to get through difficult situations.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at today's FEMA Review Council meeting. More from the Spectrum News article on the meeting. The third public hearing of the FEMA Review Council came 3 days after 180 current and former FEMA employees sent a letter to the council criticizing cuts to the agency's staff and programs, warning that FEMA's ability to respond to major disasters was diminished. Some of the employees who signed the letter were put on administrative leave Tuesday. That was from Spectrum News. This is Washington Today. New York Times writes, an hours-long barrage of Russian missiles and drones killed at least 18 people in Ukraine's capital, including 4 children, early on Thursday, officials said. The assault, less than 2 weeks after President Trump's summit in Alaska with President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia, showed how the recent American diplomatic flurry has done little to change the Kremlin's determination to continue fighting in Ukraine. That was from the New York Times. One of those missiles hit a building that belongs to the European Union mission. And the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, posting on X, just spoke with President Volodymyr Zelensky, then President Donald Trump, following the massive strike on Kyiv, which also hit our EU offices. Putin must come to the negotiating table. We must secure a just and lasting peace for Ukraine with firm and credible security guarantees that will turn the country into a steel porcupine. Europe will fully play its part of the post from Ursula von der Leyen, who then made a statement to the press in Brussels.
I'm outraged by the attack on Kyiv, also hitting our EU offices. This was the deadliest drone and missile attack on the capital since July. And as you can see behind me on the screen, it was an attack also on our delegation. I just spoke with our deputy ambassador, and I'm relieved that none of our staff were harmed. Last night's attack struck in close proximity of the diplomatic mission, the representation of our union. 2 missiles hit in a distance of 50 meters of the delegation within 20 seconds. And this is another grim reminder of what is at stake. It shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women, and children, and even targeting the European Union. This is why we are keeping maximum pressure on Russia. That means tightening our sanctions regime. We will come forward soon with our 19th package of hard-biting sanctions. And in parallel, we are advancing the work on the Russian frozen assets to contribute to Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. And of course, we are ensuring strong, unwavering support to Ukraine, our neighbor, partner, friend, and our future member. Tomorrow, I will travel to the 7 member states that are strengthening and protecting our external borders with Russia and Belarus. I want to express the EU's full solidarity with them and share the progress we are making in building a strong European defense industry, especially through our joint defense instrument, SAFE. And finally, I want to thank our brave staff in the EU delegation in Ukraine. They are doing outstanding work under extremely difficult conditions. I will deliver this message to them in person when I next go to Kyiv. Thank you very much.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Brussels. A post on X from Keith Kellogg, U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine. Last night, Russia launched the second largest aerial attack of the war with 600 drones and 31 missiles. The targets, not soldiers and weapons, but residential areas in Kyiv, blasting civilian trains, the EU and British Mission Council offices, and innocent civilians. These egregious attacks threaten the peace that President Trump is pursuing. That post from Keith Kellogg. Reuters writes that Britain, France, and Germany on Thursday launched a 30-day process to reimpose UN sanctions on Iran over its disputed nuclear program, a step likely to stoke tensions 2 months after Israel and the United States bombed Iran. A senior Iranian official quickly accused the three European powers of harming diplomacy and vowed that Tehran would not bow to pressure over the move by the E3 to launch the so-called snapback mechanism. The three powers feared they would otherwise lose the prerogative in mid-October to restore sanctions on Tehran that were lifted under a 2015 nuclear accord with world powers. That was from Reuters. Stefan Dujarric, a spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General, spoke about this at the start of his daily press conference.
A number of you this morning have asked me about the letter sent from France, Germany, and the United Kingdom to the President's Security Council in accordance to Resolution 2231. I can tell you that the Secretary General is aware that today the Security Council received this joint letter from those three countries. The Secretary General urges the JCPOA participants and the Security Council to continue negotiations to find a diplomatic solution that ensures the peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program and brings about economic benefits to the people of Iran. In the next 30 days, there is a window of opportunity to avoid any further escalation and find a way forward that serves peace. The Secretary General welcomes any efforts to that end. He also underscores the imperative to exert all efforts to prevent a renewed military conflict and calls for prioritizing dialogue to address concerns related to Iran's nuclear program and broader regional security.
Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General, at his daily news conference at the UN in New York City. The Russian Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, held a news conference at the UN today announcing that Russia and China have introduced a UN Security Council resolution to extend the timeline of the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement, which expires this October. He also said the European nations are acting illegally in triggering snapback sanctions.
Now, the world is at crossroads. It's quite clear. One option is peace, diplomacy, goodwill, normal human contact. Another option is kind of diplomacy at the barrel of the gun. Hands extortion and blackmail, all other things. The second option is clearly represented by the action that was triggered today by France, UK, and Germany. You all know that they circulated a letter triggering so-called snapback. I will not explain you this procedure in detail. I think everybody who is knowledgeable of this fact doesn't have such a necessity. But I will say that this move by European countries, in our view, has absolutely no legal bearing, because they were not implementing Resolution 2231 in good faith. For example, they did nothing in terms of lifting sanctions against Iran during the so-called transition day 2 years ago. They are acting absolutely in breach of JCPOA in each and every sense and letter and spirit of this document. They have not exhausted the mechanisms foreseen by JCPOA, first and foremost dispute resolution mechanism. So we do not think that this move by these three countries should entail any action from the Council. This is our very strong and principled conviction.
The Russian Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations, Dmitry Polyansky, at a UN news conference today in New York City. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio writing on X, the E3, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom initiated a process to reimpose UN sanctions on Iran. Snapback sanctions are a direct response to Iran's continuing defiance of its nuclear commitments. The United States supports the E3's decision and urges Iran to engage in serious diplomatic negotiations to resolve the nuclear issue. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter Word for Word. We'll send you the stories making headlines in Washington every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.